Before I start tonight's program, I just want to remind everybody that the Southwest Harbor Public Library is not really what you think of when you think of a public library. It is actually a private institution, and it is 85% supported by donations from you, from the community. The town gives us some money. We have an endowment, which we put money into, but we need to raise money every year. So just keep it in mind when you're giving that we depend on you, and we like to be here to do programs like this for you. So thank you very much. This evening, we're going to learn about e-bikes. We're lucky enough to have right here in town, just a couple of doors down, Bob Shields, known locally as Bicycle Bob. Bob has been in Southwest Harbor for over 30 years. He knows bikes. And about, what was it, 2019, he started having e-bikes in addition to what I think of as a bike. E-bikes became legal on the park roads, on the park carriage roads in 2019. Reduce the speed. You can't go too fast on them because we don't want to scare the horses or the walkers, but you can now ride them in the park, which has greatly increased the interest around here. Bob's shop can sell, repair, or rent an e-bike for you. He has 2 certified mechanics working on the e-bikes. Jonathan, who will be part of the presentation, and Evan, who's going to be part of the heckling section. So I don't want to take any more time. I want Bob and Jonathan to fill you in on all the ins and outs of e-bikes. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you. Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to start by saying I'm not here to sell you a bike. I'm here just to present what options there are so that you can make an intelligent decision on what to purchase. I ride an e-bike myself for transportation purposes, as opposed to riding in the park as recreational purposes. We have people that ride because they no longer have the ability, or they've never been up, say, some of the mountains on the carriage trails. And I, for one, ride one, say, if I want to go to run an errand to the food mart, or if I want to go hiking on the Western Mountain trails. It's an easy way of getting there without taking the car. So it's, for some people, it's transportation, and for others, it's recreation. And that being said, there are 3 classes of e-bikes. There is class 1, which is pedal assist up to 20 miles an hour. So if you stop pedaling, it stops assisting. The motor disengages when you stop pedaling. Class 2 is a throttle assist, meaning you can just get on it, not pedal, and hit an accelerator or a throttle, and the bike will go without needing to pedal. And then class 3 will take you up to 30 miles an hour, pedal assist. So the park will only allow class 1 on the carriage trails. So what I'm going to show you here are 2 different kinds of e-bikes. It boils down to either a hub drive, or rather a mid-drive, mid-drive or a hub drive. Now the hub drive produces 30% efficiency, and the mid-drive is 70 or 80%. So this is far superior to the hub drive. The disadvantages of the hub drive is that the electronics come all the way back from the display to the hub, and the rear wheel is bolted on, whereby on the mid-drive, the electronics stop right here, and all of this is just a bike. So say you have a flat tire, it's just a flat tire. If you know how to change a flat, this is just basic. With this, again, you have to disconnect the wiring harness. You need a wrench to remove it, and then you can change a flat. The other issue here is that the weight isn't as balanced as it would be in the center, the mid-drive. If, heaven forbid, you had an issue where you needed to replace the rear wheel, on this, it would, the motor would have to be relaced onto the wheel. With this, you can go into any bike shop, whether they sell e-bikes or not, and just get a replacement wheel. So this stops being an e-bike after this, whereby this is basically where this controls are all the way back. There's wiring and harnesses and all kinds of things. The ones that we like are the Bosch system, and pretty much everyone has something made by Bosch in their house, whether it be a dishwasher, power tools. You pop the hood of your car, you'll see something that's made by Bosch under the hood. So they're a world-renowned company that has lots and lots of product support. This, on the other hand, the hub drive has very limited product support. The product is only supported through the company that sold the bike. After that, you're sort of on your own as far as having it repaired. Whereby one of our largest distributors is stocks the Bosch parts. And Jonathan and Evan, who are here in the audience, have been trained to repair the Bosch system. Other things that are nice about the Bosch is that it has a plug-in diagnostic, just like a car. If something's not working right, you bring it in and we plug it in and it says, check your wiring harness for speed, or check your light system, or check whatever. It'll give you an error code that will enable you to then inspect that specific part and order it. So that's a whole lot nicer than the hub drive. But the butt is cost. You kind of get what you pay for here. A bike like this with the hub drive is $1,500 to $2,200, whereby a Bosch system starts at around $2,500. But we have yet to have a motor failure on one of these, and we have several that have occurred here, where if it needs a new motor, we have to relace the rear wheel. And that's on the customer's dime if it's not under warranty, which is $200-300. So that narrows the playing field a little bit. The Bosch system starts with an active line motor, which is measured in Newton meters. 40 Newton meters is the entry level motor. And then next comes a 50 Newton meter motor. And then this one is an 85 Newton meter motor. So the bigger the motor, the more power it has and the more it costs. So say if you weigh 200 pounds, you probably would want at least a 50, if not the 60. This is a 65. And then the 85 is the class 3. So a lot of people that are a little heavier would want a 65 versus a 50. These are approximately 50 Newton meters, converting it to with the Bosch system.
Hey, Bob,
Yes,
I'm lost. What's the 65 and the 85? Is that the size of the bike or? what?
size of the motor.
Oh, okay.
65 is the performance line, and 40 and 50 are the active lines of the Bosch configuration of the
Thank you.
motor.
Great.
This is a Chinese product that has very, very little product support. Like if you bought this bike online, I wouldn't recommend. They would, and you had an issue with Bafang, which this is the motor, they would tell you to take it up with Bafang, which we have, and that's a lot of problems. Because let me get back to you right away. The motor is built into the frame on the Bosch system, and each frame that offers Bosch vets the manufacturer to make sure that the bike is worthy of their system. Whereby this essentially is a regular bicycle with just a motor on the back wheel and wiring harness that goes to the back. Here's your battery pack on the hub drive, and on the mid drive, this one has the motor encased in here. Another variation of the Bosch system is battery is here. So there's plenty of room to get through, easy step through. Your display gives you levels of power, and it gives you how many miles the bike has on it, as well as battery life. So you turn it on, and by default, it goes just with no assist, and then you select your assistance level. This has the same assistance level as well, but it doesn't give you speed, it doesn't give you distance. So therefore, we added a bike computer on to provide the things that aren't available on this system.
Question, Bob?
Yes.
Hi. Hi, Bob.
Hi.
Two questions. One is, are there other mid-drive systems that you looked at in your shop or just looked at that you like besides Bosch?
Yes, Shimano makes a mid-drive, and that's very good too.
And that's made by Shimano. It's not Bosch. It's not a Bosch product.
Right, right.
Yeah.
The Shimano ones are certainly serviced through Shimano, but Bosch has multiple venues of getting parts. And say if you travel, you take this bike to Florida and you stop over in Maryland and you have a problem. Basically, any bike shop knows Bosch. They know that too, but about as far as parts availability, they're kind of sketchy. The Bafang.
I had a second question too.
Yes.
It's a little more general. So if you had somebody who is older, I guess I should include myself, in my late 60s, older, but doesn't have a real history of riding much, would you steer them more towards a class, not thinking about the carriage roads, would you steer them more towards a class 1 bike versus class 2 or class 3? I mean, somebody who's maybe just getting back into biking, maybe they biked when they were, 30, 40 years ago. Is that a consideration?
I would do a class 1. The class 2 has a throttle. So basically, if you use the throttle, you're not pedaling and then you're not getting any exercise. Plus, if it's a throttle bike with a wider tire, it will weigh anywhere from 75 to 100 pounds. That makes it hard to transport. And one of the reasons the park doesn't like the class 2 is you have a tire that could be 3 inches wide and knobby, and you're at the bottom of a hill and you can't get the bike going with a bike that heavy. You hit the accelerator and you're spitting dirt out the back, which creates a maintenance issue for the park. So that's why they're sort of reluctant to have class 2s out there. And then a lot of bike shops don't like class 2 because basically my feeling is just buy a Vespa at that point. Because you don't have to pedal it. And if you run out of juice, you've got a very, very heavy bike that you probably can't even pedal. I mean, these are heavy enough. They're like 55 pounds.
So
Yes.
these are all type 1s you're showing us?
Excuse me?
These are all type 1s you're showing us then?
These are all class 1s.
Okay.
The other big thing about e-bike purchase is transporting the bike. Say for those that don't live right next to where they want to ride, say a carriage trail, you have to get the bike to the carriage trail. And the traditional bike rack on your car doesn't work. So you have 2 options. Either if you want a pickup, fine, you can put it in the back of the pickup. Or if you have a receiver hitch, you can put it onto a hitch rack, which is a tray rack, platform rack. And they will hold more weight than certainly a strap rack. A lot of them tilt so that you can easily lift, say, the front wheel and get it started on the rack. But as far as lifting it like this high and putting it on a rack, that's kind of hard because this one's about 65 pounds and that's about 55. Those 2 are like 55. This is it's a lot of weight to lift up and just put on a rack. Plus the straps won't hold. So when you're leaving tonight, I brought these over on my rack that's on my car out back, so you can see one option for transporting the rack, the bikes, that is. I have seen a lot of class 2 bikes with mechanical disc, which is a cable actuated brake versus a hydraulic. And I would stay away from a mechanical disc brake. The hydraulic ones are that much more powerful and sure stopping, and you don't have to worry about getting the bike to stop when you really need it. That being said, Bosch is working on they're working on an anti-lock system for e-bikes, because one of the biggest accidents, or the most common accident, is a panic stop. You're going down a hill, you're like, oh, I gotta stop, and you hit the brakes and launch yourself. So motorcycles have the anti-lock brakes, and Bosch has made those for years for motorcycles. So a lot of this stuff is coming over from the motorcycle industry, the brakes and the suspension It's all coming over from there. So again, this bike in the front is a Bosch with a smaller motor than this. And this is a $2,700, give or take. And this is like $3,500, but there's much more power in the motor. And having the battery concealed is a lot cleaner. Battery, the electronics are more protected. And this also offers the capability of adding a second battery. So if you want to ride your bike to Bangor or something, you add a second battery. And we have a customer who commutes to Lemoyne to COA, and he has a second battery. And he has no worries. I mean, he can run one down and then let the other one go. So,
How do you charge them?
okay, so you have a charge port right here on the internal battery. This one has the charge port right here, right here. They both use the same charger.
Could you show the charge port again?
See what?
Could you show the charge port again? If this
So this charge port
is right.
is right here.
Yep.
Little rubber protective covering.
And the one above?
And the one above is right here.
Excellent. Thank you.
And do you need a
Now, you can charge the bike, the batteries right on the bike, or having the key, which is right here. Never take my battery out. Jonathan. You can bring this inside, leave the bike outside, if you want to cover contact.
How much does that weigh? How much do the batteries weigh?
Too bad, only 6 pounds.
I thought if it was substantial, it would help with getting the bike on a rack, but.
Yes, well, that's a good question, because my rack out back has a 40-pound capacity per bike. And if I take the battery and the seat and the post off, I get right near the 40-pound. They do make bike racks that handle 50 pounds or 60 pounds. If you don't want to bother doing all this. But these people, Gazelle, recommend when you're transporting them for long distances to remove the battery. Plus, there's less of a theft deterrent. If you have, this is a built-in lock. If the thing is locked and you have the battery, where are they gonna go with it? Nowhere. I can't take it and hide it off.
Do you need special equipment to charge?
No, it comes with a charger and it's just an AC outlet. So if you ran this down to, so there's 5 levels of charge. We typically would send this bike out fully charged, and then when it comes back, it may have 2 bars left. And in an hour and a half, 2 hours, it's back up to full charge. So it's pretty quick charging. This bike, kind of neat, has a handle on the back of the seat, so you can lift it. Clever. This is the smallest e-bike that we either rent or sell. This is 16 inches, very, very small. For somebody 5 feet to say 5'4" would ride a bike like this, whereby this is what's called a mid-step. So it's not fully down, it's halfway. So this would be for somebody 5'6", 5'8" would ride this size. And then they make a larger one than this.
That one doesn't come smaller.
Is this the smallest one we have of this?
Yeah, that's a 45
Okay.
centimeter. And they come in different frame sizes, but the bar itself is still the mid-step.
Yeah.
As small, so it's scaled up and down with the same frame design. Where like the batch that's here has a frame design and then that's scaled up and down for size, for body height and proportions. So you can kind of, like in the other country, if you're gonna get a road bike, you know, you have different frame sizes,
Yeah.
but like a road bike frame design is gonna be different than like a mountain bike frame design.
Yeah.
You know, and they have different ones that will fit different size people for frame size, so it'll kind of.
This is a Dutch bike, and the folks at Gazelle tell me that the Dutch are among the tallest people in the world. So for a Dutchman, if he's 6 feet tall, he's average height. Whereby, say here, the average height for a male is maybe 5'9". So they're much taller than us, so they think this is a little bike. I don't think so, but they do.
How long does the battery last? It's a lifetime.
How many cycles would you say?
So Bosch. Well, so for their batteries, Bosch says they can get like 1,000 charge cycles out of them pretty easily. Like any modern battery, the capacity basically degrades as the battery gets charged more and more. So it doesn't mean that you're necessarily, the battery's all of a sudden just gonna like die. It just means that it's gonna have less of a capacity to it. So depending on how you use the bike and how many miles you get out of a charge cycle out of it. So say if you get, I mean, they gave the example of if you get 60 miles on the charge and you get 1,000 charge cycles, that's 60,000 miles. Which is a lot of miles. I mean, you think of how you're gonna use if you can use the bike for that long. So they're not too worried about that. They're also tend to be very good about their warranties. So if there is some issue with the batteries, that is on their part, they're good about replacing them. So in their diagnostics and things that can be done with those too, they have their own sets of error codes and everything like that that can be kind of.
One other question, is there extra maintenance with these electric bikes versus a regular bike you pedal and every once in a while you bring it into Bob and he.
Well, you don't want to get this wet. I mean, yes, you may get caught in a rainstorm, but you bring it home and wipe it off. I mean, I do that with my own bike, but non-e-bike. But you know, some people will just ride it and put it away wet. You want to wipe off the control, the display, the controls, and you want to make sure there's no standing water or any moisture. Bosch says that you can get it, it'll survive a light rain, but as far as a heavy driving rain, which you're not going to go out and ride in, and so those are things you should do, is wipe the bike off. And then if it's not working, it, like Jonathan said, it'll throw an error code, and then we'll figure out what's wrong based on what the code says.
And how hard is it to pedal if you do get stuck out on the?
Well, you do have gears on this. This is 9 speeds. So this first gear is approaching a 1-to-1 ratio, which means that 1 pedal revolution turns the rear wheel once. So it's not, I mean, it's not a lot of fun per se, but it'll get you back to where.
I know we have some other questions online, but did you want to finish your presentation, and take some more at the end?
Yeah, I'll take those at the end.
Okay,
Just as the bicycle industry is concerned about fires and all kinds of like things of that nature with the batteries and whatnot. And so they're making attempts to have these things UL listed and CPSC approved, Consumer Product Safety Commission. And my insurance renewal is asking me if these people have proof of insurance liability, so that God forbid something happened, that they and me aren't on the hook for the whole debacle of, say, a fire. Because I don't know if anyone's read about the ones in New York City in an apartment building. You know, that would be a nightmare, having this thing catch on fire in an apartment building and just burn the whole place down. So the industry is stepping in to make sure these things are safe. And another reason why you want to purchase an e-bike from a company that does have liability. If we had one that came in that we didn't know what it was, we probably would turn it away based on, we don't want it in the store overnight and God forbid there was a fire. My insurance wouldn't pay for it and I'd be on the hook and it could be a disaster. We have seen even knockoffs of the Fang. That's an easier system to make because all you have to do is order a frame and put a motor on the back and the wiring to the rear. The frame is made specifically for the Bosch motor. So there's a lot more thought that goes into a Bosch or a Shimano for that matter. So we'll take some questions, online questions.
sure. I'm gonna just jump in now with this handy dandy microphone because it really helps our online people. So if you want to speak into that, it'd be brilliant. Thank you.
About health,
Nice.
about health. About how far can you go on one battery charge? And does the speed you're going make a difference in how far you can go?
It's not speed, it's how much assistance you're asking of the motor. So if you ask it to perform in the turbo mode, it's about half of what the echo mode is. So it's about 60 miles on the echo mode.
Yeah.
I mean, most of us, if you ride this thing, sit on this seat for 60 miles, you'll be like, you're done. You'll never want to ride the thing again. If you're in a hurry and want to get somewhere quick, or if all you have is a hill to go up, yeah, you want more assistance. But most of us, or most of the terrain here, as you go up a hill, it levels off and then you're down the other side, so.
So I've got a question from Craig online. He says, what are your most common repairs on e-bikes and what would an annual repair budget look like?
I'd say the most common repairs would be a chain, like a regular bike. Being that it's a hydraulic brake, the system is sealed with mineral oil, and so there's a brake bleed, which is just like a regular bike. Tires. That's about it, right?
Yeah, the things, I guess the things that would wear. Well, I should say the things that could wear faster. Than a normal bike would be probably the rear tire is gonna wear faster because you're getting more. Torque through it, is being to propelling the bike, like your car. So if you have a front wheel drive car, your front wheels are gonna wear faster than the back ones. So if you. So that in mind, I mean, you can rotate your tires on your bike, pull them off of a rim and put them on. You can't switch the wheels like you do on the car, but if you're thrifty, you can switch the tires and then get more life out of them that way and replace them both at the same time. Or you can just wear one out, the rear one, replace it, and then by the time it's worn down again, you're probably due for a set. So the brakes will wear slightly faster than a non-e-bike because of the added weight. You're stopping a little bit more than you would be on a normal bike. The chains tend to do fairly well. I think they're probably about on par, like with a regular, if you buy an e-bike chain, because they're designed for the extra stresses that are involved with it, and they basically will wear longer. So they get about the same life out of them that you would a normal chain. A lot of that is dependent on your care for it. If you're lubricating it and keeping it clean, that'll make more of a difference than if it's an e-bike or not an e-bike. The downside of the e-bike chain is they're probably about twice as expensive because of that. So you can replace it maybe about the same amount, but you're going to be spending more on that chain than you would a regular bicycle. The brakes are the same. Brake pads would be the same cost, regardless of it being e-bike or not. And what's that? Sorry.
Derailleurs and the shifters.
They would be the same. So the derailleurs and so for, oh yeah, so the derailleurs, shifters, cables, things like that would be the same as a regular bicycle. So depending on the conditions that they're ridden in, dust, water, all those kinds of things can determine the longevity of them. With hydraulic brakes, it's kind of like your car. So the brake fluid, whether it be mineral oil or stock fluid like you find in your car, absorbs moisture to basically keep it, to contain it so it doesn't cause corrosion and brake failure or poor performance. So it's good to replace it periodically. If you don't, even if you're not feeling anything, because it has longevity to the system itself, keeping corrosion from building up inside, and also getting better performance with it in the long run. So it's good to do, say, every other year kind of a thing, regardless of it being an e-bike or not. But if it's a hydraulic system, to do it probably in that frequency. And otherwise, the system with the Bosch systems, when you're doing maintenance on them, basically you're hooking it up to a computer like you would bringing your car in to get it serviced. But the nice thing about it as well is that the service records go onto the bike. So depending on what you're doing, but all that can get inputted, and then basically you save it onto the bicycle. And then that can get pulled up from the next mechanic. If you're down in Florida, you're traveling around, whatever, you can see the last time the service was done, what was done, and basically all of the past histories that was happening with the bicycle, which is kind of nice. I should say this is an option, and hopefully Bosch mechanics do that so that the next person can see it. So anyway.
So for the original question was about the annual budget for
Yeah.
repair. So it sounds like it might be a every other year type, or every 2 year type of budget type of a thing.
Well, we'd like to see a bike every year come through the shop to do a regular maintenance check on it. Or more frequently could be, depending on how much you're using it. This guy who does his commuting on it, like he got it from us in the last spring.
A year ago, April, May.
Yeah, he brought it in like a month ago, and he had put 2,000 miles on it already. You know, so he was due for all that service to be done, his brakes, his chain. He had a lot more going on because of the amount of miles he was doing. So some of it's time sensitive, like the brakes, and some of it's mileage.
How much did that cost?
So for him, I think we replaced the chain, we bled the brakes, we did like the full Monty tune-up on it. And I think it was like
Couple $100.
yeah. So something like that.
So this display indicates that in the eco mode, it has an 86-mile range.
Turbo's the highest, right?
Turbo's the highest. So yeah, if you go to turbo, it's 32 miles.
Okay.
So they have, it's basically, the Bosch system has 4 different power settings for this style. The fancier ones that they're getting into have like more advanced settings, which are basically kind of like smart. And they sort of help, they modulate the power in a more particular way, in which it's sort of, you can basically put in the smart mode and it gives you more assistance when you need it and less when you don't. So anyway, I think one thing that Bob, maybe, so the hub drive motors are basically more of like an on-off. So there's a switch that's basically in the bottom bracket in your cranks. So as you start to pedal, detects that you're spinning the cranks and it kicks the motor on. And it drives the motor until you stop pedaling and then the motor stops. But basically, depending on what power setting you have it in, is how much the motor is driving you. So it's basically, there's a set level that when it's on, it's doing this, and when it's off, it's off. So it's either doing, you know. The hub drives are nice in the sense that what they have is both that cadence. So when you're pedaling, it knows not only that you're pedaling, but how fast you're pedaling. And it has a torque sensor in it as well, so that it knows how hard you're pedaling. So the faster you're pedaling and the harder you're pedaling, the more the motor puts out in that set mode. So it mimics your own inputs much better than just being an on-off. So for beginner riders, it feels a lot more natural in the sense that when you're getting on it, it's not just like kicking on and pushing you along. So as you start, it'll ramp and it kind of ramps up and lets off as you're pedaling harder or faster and slowing. And so the downside of the other thing I've heard about going for group rides with the hub motors is that it's harder to regulate your speed, to modulate your speed in more like in finer detail with like riding with a group. So it feels like you're kind of pulling ahead, or you're like, you know, it's not like you can just like match your speed as easily with another rider. Where the hub drives, it's harder than the mid drives. You have a little more sensitivity in what your input is and what the bike is doing to be able to modulate your speed more closely.
Talk to them about the displays, the different upgrades and.
Yeah. So most all the Bosch ones we come with this basic display unit, but like any manufacturer, they like to sell you accessories, right? So they give you, it's a decent display. It gives you your speed, it gives you your battery, it has different functions like a trip distance speeder, your how many miles you have left on your battery in whatever particular mode you're in. And the total mileage, the total odometer that's on the bike. They have aftermarket, well, not, they have their own displays that you can buy. They're not aftermarket, they're Bosch displays. Some of them are more oriented towards like fitness. And you can be linked up to like a heart rate monitor. You can do all that kind of Bluetooth stuff with them. You can connect it to your phone, that you can have a pre-programmed route on it. And it basically will tell you, you know, take a left here, you know, next turn, half a mile, go left, you know, it'll sort of actively give you directions as you're going. They have some that basically are, you can use your like if you have a smartphone, you can use your smartphone as a display, basically, and then the system links up to your phone through an app. And then basically you can use your smartphone as your display unit. And if you don't have your smartphone, there's a basic display basically underneath it. So you don't have to use, but you can do that. So you can be listening to your music, you can, whatever you can have, you're just, using your maps, your, text messages come through. For a lot of people, it's not really a big deal. For some people, they love it. So, and
There's a walk mode too.
yeah, so they have a walk mode, which is basically, so if you are pushing your bike, say you're getting off and you have a hill, you're pushing it up to, like you're getting up to the Jordan Pond house or something, right? And you have to, you don't want you to ride your bike, but you don't want to be pushing this thing up the hill. So you can basically put it into a walk mode, and as you hold the button and you're walking, the motor itself will gently push the bike along with you. So you're not having to take the weight of the bike,
Like a self-propelled lawnmower.
kind of a thing. You have to walk with it, but as soon as you let go, it stops. So it's like your lawnmower too. If you let go of it, it's not going to keep going on its own. One other difference between them as well is that the mid drives are all single chain rings in the front, so you don't have a front derailleur on the mid drives. So you basically have a cassette in the back, and then you have a single chain ring in the front. But the way that they designed them, you basically have a good range for that within that cassette. So this has like an 11 tooth cog is the smallest one, and then up to like a 42. So you have a really good spread to be able to, you can easily go 20 miles an hour with it. You can go above it pedaling if you want. At the same time, you can creep up a hill without any issue. So
Is the walk mode functionality you mentioned standard, or is that one of the upgrades that you buy?
Standard.
That's standard.
Standard.
Thank you.
It's on here.
That Fuji bike, is that actually manufactured by Fuji, or was it sold? Did Fuji sell their basic bicycle to somebody else who designed the system?
Well,
And,
it's actually made by Fuji. I mean, that's how it comes out of the box. All of these are as they are out of the box.
So the Treks of the world and the Cannondales and the other bicycle companies, are they also going to be making e-bikes, and are they going to be like the Bosches, or are they going to be more like
Well,
Fuji?
Trek does use Bosch in there as one of their offerings. At least we've had Treks in the shop for service that were Bosch equipped. So we were totally familiar with it, so there's no mystery. Who else does it? Giant does it, and
So like, they have the opportunity, you can develop your own drivetrain, you can develop your own system, or you can basically buy a system. You can buy like a hub drive, the FANG system, or something like that. And then you design the bike and you can put it together. If it's a company that's developing, if it's like a bicycle company that's developing their own system, then they're developing it along with the bikes that they're going to be putting them together with, right? So they would want to probably make the proper safety things to make sure that it's all going to work well together. So with Bosch does not make a bicycle, right? They make power componentry for a bicycle. So when a bicycle manufacturer says, we want to put our system on your bikes, and they say, send us a frame. Basically, design your frame, like here are the parameters around it, this is the mounting points, this is the, have to be there. This is where the battery, the shapes and sizes of the batteries that we make, this is, but you have to make it fit the frame. So the frame gets shipped to Bosch, and then Bosch goes through it and says, you really should think about needing to beef this up more. This needs to be stronger, and they do their own testing on it to make sure that it's going to be a safe thing before they allow their systems to go on to the frame. That makes sense.
What's maximum speed you're gonna get out of these bikes?
20 on these, and then the motor cuts out. But on a class 3, it can go up to 30. So I have a class 3 that I ride up to the food mart and go up that hill at 20 something miles an hour, and it's great. So it's like a commuter. But it's a class 3, so it's got a bigger motor and a higher price tag, and it's a lot of people that think 20 is fast, get on the 30 and like, whoa, this is too much for me.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't need a Corvette, I only need a Corolla.
Is there a governor if you're going downhill?
Well, it kicks out at 30, but I wound mine up to like 47 or something. You can keep going.
But it's all you.
It's all you after 30.
What proportion of your business now is e-bike versus traditional bike?
It's still probably only 30% sales, because it's not an impulse purchase. It's not like, oh, my husband wants, I buy him a necktie or I buy him this, it's like, you gotta think about it. So,
But 30
and
is a
having
lot.
all this information allows you to make a bit more of a
Yeah.
informed decision. So on this bike, back to this bike, the blue on this bike is all made in Holland. The motor is German and the rest is Japanese by Shimano. So there's no mystery about this bike, since he knows how to fix this and I know how to fix the rest. And Evan too, for that matter. So it's,
I've got a question from Sue Whitby. Are there laws regarding using these bikes on roads with cars, or are they treated just like traditional bikes?
currently there are no laws. Some states have an age limit or age minimum requirement of 16 or 18. We don't rent a bike to anyone under 18, just for our insurance liability. But there are other bike paths out there in other states that won't allow anything but a class 1. They won't allow a 2 or a 3 because of the speed and the size of the tire and whatnot.
Yeah, no, that was on public roads, like if you're riding it, it's the same laws and same responsibilities of motor vehicle,ists as of a regular bicycle. But like you're saying, if it's a private, like the park loop, but the carriage roads or bike paths, rail trails, stuff like that, there can have limitations on them set by whatever state organization or whatever it may be. But then you have to follow their rules.
Are there any bike paths that don't allow e-bikes? Yeah.
I would imagine. Just as much as like you go onto the private carriage roads that are on private land don't allow bicycles, at all in that regard.
Yeah.
If you have a trail system, and it's a private thing, you're free to do what you want with it.
Yeah.
And allow who you want on it and how they're going to be using it. So that's up to, yeah.
As basic transportation, you're talking about, not getting out in the heavy rain. Well, if you're using it to commute, you're gonna get in heavy rain. So you're gonna short out the battery or what? You're talking about wiping it down, you gotta be careful not getting wet.
Well, it's more so with the Bafang one. We've had a Bafang one returned to us that the display stopped working. And folks at Gazelle told us that this can take moderate rain. If it were me riding in the rain, I'd put a plastic bag over this and a rubber band, and that would seal 90% of the moisture. that
No
could be
problem
from-
with getting into the battery compartment? That's what we could be concerned with.
Yeah. So Bosch, they also, like we're saying, they developed like ABS units, motor control units for automobiles. So all the connections that are on these guys are all sealed. So they're basically gasketed and sealed connections that should be safe, and well, you don't want to go dump it into the bay, you know, but for normal rainage use, you get stuck out in their storm, whatever, it's, you know, things happen, right? So, so ideally, nothing would be, no problems would occur, you know?
But then again, for most of us, if we know the weather forecast and we're a cycle commuter, we know it's gonna rain like hell, we basically will take the car and not even get wet on the bike. So, you know, you plan accordingly usually.
Bob, we have a question over here.
Yes,
So my question is a bit more about thinking about widespread adoption of e-bikes. This may be a really unrealistic thought, but do you see the price of these potentially going down or leveling out? Because you're talking the Gazelle 3500, you could get a really nice hybrid in your shop for probably what, half that price to ride on the carriage roads. So I'm just thinking about, like, for the masses, it would be nice to have access to e-bikes, but cost seems like it's probably a barrier right now.
well, you can get a Gazelle for a bike similar to this for $2,500. It'll have a smaller motor, and not all of us need a bigger motor. Like if you're under 150 pounds, the smaller motor might be just fine for you.
So I'm sort of hearing that it's never gonna match up with a non-e-bike, because you can get a really nice hybrid in your shop for $1,500. That's not an e-bike.
Yeah,
That's lightweight, you could, but, yeah.
Because basically, this is a bicycle, right? Plus an e-bike on top of it, like everything that makes it the e-bike, so. Well, the prices, it's like electric cars, right?
Yeah.
They used to look back when they first came out, they were, you know, the roof, and as research and development goes, you know, they implement the things they've learned, and the prices kind of, you get more for your money and prices come down, right? In that regard, so it's always going to be more expensive than a standard bicycle, just because of what's involved with it. I think you're going to you'll get more for your money down the road as research and development continues to improve. So you'll maybe be paying the same amount, but you'll be getting more for your money as they continue to get battery technology better. They need to get those things more refined, you know. Same thing with an electric vehicle. As they go down the road, you're going to be getting more for what you're spending, more for your money, because they're, past people that bought them early are paying for the one that you're getting to some degree.
And my question is really kind of my background and training is in public health, and really thinking from a population perspective. We've got an aging population, and being able to use e-bikes, have accessibility to them. And it's not talking about your prices or anything, but kind of looking at more globally, that it's a really, it'd be nice for people to have accessibility down the line.
The bicycle components of, say, like this black one here in the front, are they as customizable as we're used to with like my hybrid bike that I take, you know, on trails? You know, I was able to change the handlebars, so I could change my riding position. And so it is customizable as well.
well, I was going to bring mine in, it's totally customized. That I changed the bars, I changed the stem, I got rid of the fork, put a carbon fork. I got rid of the built-in lock. What else did I do? I put different tires on, and I took 10 pounds off the bike. And it doesn't go any faster. The speed kicks off from the motor at the same 30 miles an hour. However, it's just a little bit lighter lifting it up.
Thank you.
So you could do that.
All right, thank you. That could make a difference. You know, if the battery's detachable and you know, lower the weight through.
Yeah,
customizing,
that's
that
what
may
I
make a
did.
difference for it to be manageable for me, for example, to get on and off a rack.
On my end, I thought about my vehicle too. The more capacity you need out of the rack, the heavier it is. And then you're talking about the car. The car is probably moaning and groaning with a 75-pound rack on the back versus a 40-pound rack. So it's a little easier on me lifting it, and the shocks. You don't want the car going like this with hundreds of pounds off the back. So,
Hey, Bob,
yes,
I have more of a comment. So I only ride bicycles, I don't ride e-bikes. Do I have to use that? Okay. I used to judge e-bikes, but until recently, I saw a lot of people out on e-bikes, and the fact is they're getting out and they're biking. So I think that's great for people that may not want to go out and biking. But I'm just curious about like the 15-year-olds that you see, and it's just like, they're not gonna get healthy if they're just pedaling along with an assist, are they?
I would agree with you. We've had calls where an adult would call and say, my 8-year-old needs an e-bike. It's like, great, I never had one when I was 8. They pointed to the Stingray. The parents said, go ride it if you want to buy. So that's one of the reasons we don't rent bikes to kids. Kids need to ride a regular bike.
It's just nice
Plus,
people
I
have
mean, you
fun.
wouldn't give a kid a car. I mean, and if you're, say, 16 or 17 and driving a car, you've had driving instruction, hopefully. You know, hours of driving, and you take a test. You just don't hand a kid one of these and say, see you later, have fun. Bad things can happen. And it's expensive. If you ruined one of these, it's a lot of money. You're on the hook for $2,500.
Oh, are they insurable? I mean, you're just like a car, collision, comprehensive, whatever. You get in an accident.
Well, good question. I do not know the answer to that. I know that if someone has their bike stolen, or someone backs into your bike on the back of your car, sometimes it's your homeowners that pays for it. Or if it's attached to your vehicle, then it's your car insurance.
Yes.
So I don't know the answer to that.
So my road bikes, I've got it scheduled to our homeowners insurance, but it's probably not the cheapest option, but there's some bike insurance companies out there, and I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they potentially also insure e-bikes, but homeowners, we pay an extra amount of money to insure my road bike, so.
Is that just theft or what kinds of loss?
I think it's theft and damage, and I should know that better, but I know it's something
He's
theft.
gonna go home and read the policy.
You read the policy?
I'll read the policy, the 20 pages.
It's just that section.
Hey, Bob, any of your rental bikes get destroyed so far?
One fell off the back of an RV.
Did you get run over?
Well, they dragged it for like half a mile before they realized something was amiss.
What was that noise?
And
They weren't riding it.
I
though.
sold them the bike, basically, at that point. A lot of people will call and make a rental reservation, say, oh, I have a rack, but we want to see the rack. If we don't like it, we substitute ours, or they can ride right from the shop. But There are some people that'll say, oh, it's e-bike rated. It's like, no, it isn't. You put your hand on the rack and you see it flex and.
The question?
I'm more of a comment than a question. I've just recently moved here from Vermont, but I've ridden non-electric bikes as the commuter my entire career. There are laws regarding the use of electric bikes on the motorways. I don't think any of them apply to the, do you say class 1?
Mhm.
Yeah, because the pedal assist ones, most states, if they don't go about 25 miles an hour, they're treated just like bicycles. But you start getting into some of these powerful bikes, and depending on the state you're in, and again, I don't know specifically for Maine, they're classified as motorcycles.
Okay, so if it has less than 1 horsepower motor, which is under 700 watts, I believe,
Okay,
the Consumer Products Safety Commission regulates the use of them. But if you go up to and over 1 horsepower, it's an NSTA, National Safety Transportation Regulation, which is a motorcycle or a car.
Yeah.
So then you're putting it in a whole different class.
right. I just didn't want anybody to walk away from this with the impression that because it was an e-bike, they didn't need to worry about whether it was a motorcycle.
So there are
Depends on what they
people,
get for an e-bike, it might be. And it needs to be licensed and, yeah,
yes,
and inspected and insured and all that.
the industry is being called to task. So people are taking say, this is a 65, they're taking 85 Newton meter, the largest of the Bosch motors, and then modifying it. And you're getting it beyond 1 horsepower, and it's no longer an e-bike under a CPSC.
Yeah,
All
you
the
could-
consumer
Without
products.
trying
It's
very
a-
hard, you
it's
can
a
find
motorcycle
one
at that
that'll do
point.
50 or 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, I
That's
mean, they
not a
have
bicycle.
them.
Of course.
But we're not gonna sell, we're not even gonna work on those things.
Yes,
It's not what we're about. The other thing, if you ride one of these things 3 or 4 miles, I equate it to like walking a half a mile, just going for a walk. Because your heart isn't getting elevated like riding a bike. You're not sweating like you're riding a bike. But you are getting a workout. It's not like you're sitting on the couch eating bonbons. You're getting some kind of a form of exercise because you're pedaling and your legs are moving. So it's more like walking or taking a hike. You are getting exercise, and people say, oh, that's cheating. You are getting some form of exercise riding an e-bike. You may not get the same exercise as a traditional bike, but there is an exercise component to it.
Chair, I have that bike and I'm 5'4" and it works. You had said earlier you have to be like 5'6" or 5'8". So anyway,
Yes,
I
you're on
find
the
it
small
okay.
limit
Yeah.
of, well, this is the smaller one. There's, I think you have one's the next size up.
So I don't know, I'm not very tall and I'm able to ride it, I guess,
Yeah.
versus feeling like it's too much. And I'm able to get it in the back of a Subaru Outback, like if I take off the battery and the seat to lift it, which I was worried about needing a special rack. I can walk it into the back of the Outback, which is helpful because I wanted to be able to be independent too.
You're tough too, so. you certainly wouldn't want to put a second one in.
Oh,
We
no.
had someone that wanted to do that, and I think we did it once. We like put a blanket between them, and we're not doing that. It's like, it's too much money and they're not gonna handle it with care. It's like, we need a rack or a pickup truck. I'm not as familiar with the Shimano version of this mid-drive, but the display has a whole lot more information with the Shimano one. It's called the Steps. And we have a couple in the shop that are.
Yeah, so they give you, they give you some more information, and it's kind of more akin to,
Second level of display.
yeah, so if you were to upgrade, it would be a similar sort of a thing, where basically it gives you, it's like having like a little power meter. Like if people are really into cycling, they have a power meter on their bike, basically knowing like how much wattage they're putting out and being able to use to help for training, and it's another stat and all those kinds of things. So because of the nature of the motors and having the torque sensors in them, they kind of already have a power meter built in, because that's what it's monitoring, is what you're putting into it. So basically you can see that information. So you can see how much energy you're putting into comparatively to what the bike is doing. And you can, some people love that type of information, and it's something that can be had. So.
I have another person on here that says, I carry 5K of bike insurance on my Gazelle for $21 per month. Markel's the company, Markel.
Okay, that's great.
Good to know. I'm a Luddite, and this gives me all the information I need, which is the level of assistance, how much juice is in the battery, how many miles you have left, and how many cumulative miles the bike has been ridden. That's all I really need and want to know. I mean, all the other stuff is,
Gravy.
yeah, it's nothing I'm interested in knowing.
And the nice thing about Bosch, and hopefully it continues along, so as they continue to develop new displays and new products, they're backwards compatible, meaning that like a new display can go on an old bike. It might mean that you don't get all of the functions because the drive unit or whatever else has been developed further along than what you have. But the display itself or this or that can be used with older equipment. Which is kind of a nice thing that they're not just wanting to sell you a whole new system. You're able to use new stuff on the old as it goes forward. So
There's another hub drive, mid-drive system out that's proprietary, that if you had a problem with it, you would have to go to that dealer. And so we don't sell it, someone on the island does, but if you brought your Trek to us when it's Bosch, you can fix it. This other brand, it's like, go over there and they may have the part, they may not have the part. Or if you're traveling with it, I'd make a car analogy. If you had a Porsche or an Audi or some high-end vehicle, not every garage can just say, oh yeah, we know how to fix that. Whereby the Bosch stuff is pretty straightforward. They can call the parts distributor that virtually every bike shop in the industry uses. Once they've determined what the issue is, they can go online and talk to them and say, we need a controller, we need a wiring harness, we need, and so, yeah, we have one, send it out and you're good to go. And so it's a little bit less worries if you're traveling.
Any more questions?
What?
Yes, I
Oh,
have-
one more question?
Is there much of a secondhand market for these yet?
For those who are. See, basically this talk just, I mean, it's hard to sell one of these after I've told you what I told you. But if you have a kid who, I mean, we get people who lose their, I mean, we're all older, but we have people kids that lose their license, smack up the car, and they need to get to the restaurant to work. Those are perfect for that. They wouldn't care whether it was that or beach walking, beach riding up the hill or whatever. So we have those. We won't have these for a while because they'll last a whole long time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I guess, and the other, to piggyback on that as well, is because the way that sort of the service information as it gets done and gets reported is a positive. And they also have testing that can be done onto them. So the batteries, the capacity testing, system testing, and all that kind of stuff that can be done. So you kind of know the condition of before you were to buy it secondhand. You can get that information about it, which is kind of, it's a nice buying feature, and it's also a nice selling feature. So if you've taken good care of the thing, it should be worth more than if it's never been into being worked on, you know. So it's kind of like Carfax for your bike anyway, but it's a recorded history of the, and also the condition of the system in which it's there. So, you know, you can get that information about them.
And I think I mentioned before, there's numerous bike manufacturers that sell the Bosch and the Shimano system. And there are probably a dozen, there's probably 100 that sell those things because it's cheap. And if you're looking for a price point bike, then that would fit the bill. But if anything goes wrong.
I think we've all learned a great deal tonight. I'm disappointed in the hecklers. They did not.
I felt something hit the side of my face.
Well, that's-
Get out of your employment.
I thank you all for coming. And just for any of you who have not been here for a lecture before, we now ask the audience to help put the chairs back. So thank you so much, Bob. Thank
And
you.
stuff the donation, $100 bill.
Oh, always.
100.